Oh, Casey, are you there?
I am here.
Hi, honey.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm good.
All right. So this week, I'm going to try to record this and not fuck up because we fucked up last week. I fucked up. I fucked up last week and accidentally deleted the recording, so we're having to re-record this shit.
Yay!
Yay! So, this week in the Bible, the James Bond twins from last time, the ones that were all spies and shit, getting into, I want to say it's Absalom's inner circle. Anyways, they returned to Jerusalem to be their Bond guide selves. And then someone tells Abby to fuck his dad's concubines in front of everyone. So, of course, like a bro, he does it. Abby then gets more bad advice and is told to kill his, told to kill his cucked out dad. Yeah. And then Abby gets a second opinion on it and then takes everybody. Cause like the first guy was like, just take a few guys. And then this guy's like, nah, take everybody. He's like, I like that plan better. And then someone snitches on the Bond twins. This person named Heather's Tail is an advisor to Abby and is giving him bad advice while he ends up killing himself. David prepares to kick the shit out of his son's ass, and of course he whoops him pretty good. David just wanted to whoop Abby's ass, though, not kill him. So Joab said, fuck that shit, I'm gonna go and overkill this little motherfucker. And he overkills the little motherfucker.
He does do that.
Then David, of course, mourns over the death of his son, and he makes up a bullshit monument to memorialize his son, and the end. More bullshit in the Bible.
Oh boy.
That's right. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? So today on the Daily Bible Podcast, we're of course going to be going over exactly what I just laid out in the beginning part. We just really need to cross the I's, not the T's, all that kind of stuff. It's just like little details.
Oh yeah, just a little simple shit, no problem.
Oh,
you guys don't get to see the eye rolls. Yeah. Sorry about that.
So, okay, then correct me, Casey. Let's start at the beginning. So we got to start with the James Bond twins working their way back.
Well, so there are two spies. If you remember the last time David sent a couple of guys into Absalom's inner circle to feed him information so he knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. Right. So there are two James Bond twins. But they're not exactly called that, and it didn't exactly work. How you say?
Oh, well, you know what? James Bond twins. I mean, obviously, I'm right on track. So,
Well, so today we're still in 2 Samuel. I think we only have 2 Samuel this time, but we're going to be talking about. We're midway into chapter 16. We're going to be going through the rest of chapter 16 and 17 and 18. And then at the very end, we're going to start at the very beginning of 19. So that's what we're doing today. So are you ready?
Yes, I am ready to learn some Bible shit.
Okay. So meanwhile, Absalom, which we know is David's son, right?
One of his many sons from his many wives and concubines.
Yes. And all of the men of Israel came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel was with him.
Oh, Ahithophel. I thought it was like Heathen's Tale or something. It sounded really cool.
There's another one named Hushai. Hushai, the Archite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Hushai, the Archite, David's friend, went to Absalom and said to him, "Long live the king, long live the king." Absalom asked Hushai, "Is this the love you show your friend? Why didn't you go with your friend?" And he's talking about his dad. He's talking about David, because Hushai was really loyal to David. So Absalom is kind of weirded out by the fact that Hushai is with him.
Yeah, wouldn't that make you raise an eyebrow or something?
Yeah, and it did. So Hushai said to Absalom, "No, the one chosen by the Lord, by these people and by all the men of Israel, his I will be, and I will remain with him." So he basically explains it away by, God chose you to be the king, all of Israel chose you, so you're my king.
Okay.
Which, kind of fed his ego up a little bit, so he bought it. So, furthermore, whom should I serve? Should I not serve the son, just as I served your father? So I will serve you. Absalom said to Ahithophel, "Give us your advice. What should we do?" So if you don't remember, Ahithophel is kind of like, not really a prophet, but an advisor. Right? So Ahithophel answered, "Lie with your father's concubines, whom he left to take care of the palace. Then all Israel will hear that you have made yourself a stench in your father's nostrils, and the hands of everyone with you will be strengthened." So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and he lay with his father's concubines in the sight of all of Israel.
I bet he pitched a tent.
Yeah. So basically, these concubines, the 10 that were left to take care of the palace, were forced to have sex with Absalom.
Right.
In the presence of everybody. I mean, on the roof. So what could you really see inside a tent? But still.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was all done to humiliate David.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm sure that felt wonderful to his many concubines.
Well, I would argue that these women were raped. Other apologists might argue that they were concubines and they were serving him, so they were willingly doing this. But really, when you're in a position of power, how willing is this where they're taken up there and all of them have to have sex with him?
Yeah, I'm not, because I mean, is that really a choice? I mean, if you tell somebody, hey, look, you're either going to die or you're going to get fucked.
Yeah.
Like, is that really a couple of choices that you have? I mean, sure, these apologists would probably say, yeah, that's a set of choices, but it's not really.
Yeah, no. So, in those days, the advice Ahithophel gave was like that of one who inquires of God. So they're comparing him to a prophet, right?
Oh, okay.
This was how both David and Absalom regarded all of Ahithophel's advice. Ahithophel said to Absalom, "I would choose 12,000 men and set out tonight in pursuit of David." Which, I mean, after fucking 10 women, aren't you kind of tired?
Well, yeah. I mean, did he fuck them all in one day? Because that seems a bit extreme.
The timeline kind of makes it seem like that, but we don't really know. Anyway, I would choose 12,000 men and set out tonight in pursuit of David. I would attack him while he is weary and weak. I would strike him with terror, and then all the people with him will flee. I would strike down only the king, and bring all of the people back to you. The death of the man you seek will mean the return of all. All the people will be unharmed. This plan seemed good to Absalom, and to all of the elders of Israel. But Absalom said, he wanted a second opinion. Mm-hmm. So he said, "Summon also Hushai the Archite, so we can hear what he has to say." When Hushai came to him, Absalom said, "Ahithophel has given this advice. Should we do what he says? If not, give us your opinion." Hushai replied to Absalom, "The advice Ahithophel has given is not good this time. You know your father and his men, they are fighters, and as fierce as a wild bear robbed of her cubs. Besides, your father is an experienced fighter. He will not spend the night with the troops. Even now he is hidden in a cave or some other place. If he should attack your troops first, whoever hears about it will say, 'This has been a slaughter among the troops who follow Absalom.' Then even the bravest soldier whose heart is like the heart of a lion will melt with fear. For all of Israel knows your father is a fighter, and those with him are brave."
I feel like this is supposed to be a facsimile of, like, the things that God would tell his prophets to do. Yeah. Like, take this ridiculously low number of people, go and conquer these very experienced people, and then it'll be because I'm God. And so it feels like he was trying to imitate that, but yet, not.
Well, that was what Ahithophel told him to do.
No, because Ahithophel was being talked about like he was a prophet of God.
Yeah. And
so it kind of makes sense that he would be like, take 3 people with you. That's all you need. Like, I'm surprised he didn't go that low.
So Hushai is basically saying, this is bad advice and here's why. Okay.
You fucking die.
Yeah, well, he's trying to use fear to say, well, if your soldiers, if the 12,000 that you send fail, people are going to swing back to David and you're going to be fucked. Yeah. So here's what he says. I advise you, let all Israel from Dan to Beersheba, as numerous as the sand on the seashore, be gathered to you, with you yourself leading them into battle. Then we will attack wherever he may be found, and we will fall on him as dew settles on the ground. Neither he nor any of his men will be left alive. If he withdraws into a city, then all of Israel will bring ropes to that city, and we will drag it down to the valley until not even a piece of it can be found. Absalom and all of the men of Israel said, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than that of Ahithophel, for the Lord has determined to frustrate the good advice of Ahithophel in order to bring disaster on Absalom. So they think that God gave Ahithophel bad advice so that Absalom would fail.
Right, because Absalom's a little shit.
Yeah.
I mean, he is. And he's also not the chosen one, is he? I mean, David's still chosen by God.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Hushai told Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, that Ahithophel advised Absalom and the elders of Israel to do such and such, but I had advised him to do so and so. Now send a message immediately and tell David, do not spend the night at the fords in the desert, cross over without fail, or the king and all of his people with him will be swallowed up. So Hushai is sending the messages to David. Here's what the plan is, right? So, basically, they go through some other people. A servant girl was to go and inform them. They were to go and tell King David, for they could not risk being seen entering the city, but a young man saw them and told Absalom. So now Absalom knows that these spies are going to tell David, right? Mm-hmm. So the two of them left but a young man saw them and told Absalom. So the two of them left quickly and went to a house of a man in Bahurim. He had a well in his courtyard, and they climbed down into it. His wife took a covering and spread it out over the opening of the well and scattered grain over it. So no one knew anything about the well being there, mm-hmm. right? So when Absalom's men came to the woman at the house, they said, where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan? The woman answered, they crossed over the brook. So the men searched and they found no one, and so they returned to Jerusalem. After the men had gone, the two climbed out of the well and went to inform King David. So those people protected them. Right. They said to him, set out and cross the river at once. Ahithophel has advised such and such against you. So David and all of his people went with him and set out across the Jordan. But by daybreak, no one was left who had not crossed the Jordan. So they were all going, in offensive.
Right.
Okay.
As you should when you're whooping ass.
So when Ahithophel saw that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey and set out for the house in his hometown. He put his house in order and then hanged himself. So he died and was buried in his father's tomb.
It just seems so casual.
Yeah.
The way they mention it. It's like, oh, people didn't do what he said, so killed himself. It was the only option.
Well, yeah, it's really strange that he takes so much value in being able to give advice to the kings of Israel, kings, that when his advice wasn't followed once, he goes and does something dramatic like kill himself. It seems very bizarre.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're trying to contrast the perseverance of God with human, because for instance in this case, they the guy was disobeyed, so what did he do? He went and killed himself, and it's like God's like, nah, y'all fucked up.
Well, he wasn't disobeyed. He wasn't disobeyed. They just didn't take his advice. They took someone else's advice. So basically he sees himself as no longer valuable if the king of Israel is not going to take his advice. Yeah,
that still sounds like bullshit.
It's really strange. It's really strange. So anyway, by Ahithophel, he's gone. Okay. David went to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed the Jordan with all the men of Israel. Absalom had appointed Amasa over the army in place of Joab. Amasa was the son of a man named Jether, an Israelite, who married Abigail, the daughter of... This is ridiculous. Okay, so when David came to... It goes through some lineage. it doesn't make any sense. If you want to read it, it's 2 Samuel 17:24 through 29 was what I just read. Okay, so, or 24, 25. I think that's about where you're going to be. Okay, so when David came to Mahanaim, Shobi, son of Nahash from Rabbah of the Ammonites, and Machir, son of whatever. Anyway, they brought bedding and bowls and articles of pottery. They also brought wheat and barley and flour and roasted grain, beans and lentils, honey and curds, sheep and cheese from cow's milk for David and his people to eat. For they said the people have become hungry and tired and thirsty in the desert. Okay, so these people brought David and his men food and shit to eat and prepare for battle.
Mm-hmm.
So David mustered the men who were with him and appointed over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. David sent the troops out, a third under the command of Joab, a third under Joab's brother Abishai, and a third under Ittai the Gittite. Okay?
These are such complicated names.
I know.
Ittai the Gittite.
I fucking hate the names. And I really feel like it makes me sound idiotic sometimes because I have such trouble with some of the pronunciations. But, I mean, it doesn't take away from knowing the story or what's happening or anything like that. It's just these names are absurd. And it's really unimportant to the core of the story.
That's why I say we should just give them normal fucking names like Ittai the Gittite. Just call him Ichabod.
But I think we had an Ichabod earlier already.
I mean, does that really matter?
Probably not. So anyway, the king told the troops, I myself will surely march with you. But the men said, you must not go out. If we were forced to flee, they won't care about us. Even if half of us die, they won't care. But you are worth 10,000 of us. It would be better now for you to give us support from the city. The king answered, I will do what seems best to you. You don't want me to go? Sure, fine, I won't go. I was really only offering to look brave and shit. I didn't want to go anyway. So the king stood beside the gate while all the men marched out in units of hundreds and of thousands. The king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, be gentle with the young man Absalom for my sake. And all the troops heard the king give orders concerning Absalom to each of the commanders. So David doesn't want Absalom harmed.
Right.
Right?
He just wants to whoop his ass really good so that he learns his lesson.
Yeah. So the army marched into the field to fight Israel, and the battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. There the army of Israel was defeated by David's men, and the casualties that day were great, 20,000 men. The battle spread out over the whole countryside, and the forest claimed more lives that day than the sword. I'm not really sure how the forest killed more people than the people killing each other. This forest sounds fucked up, and I don't want to go there. Okay, so Absalom happened to meet David's men. He was riding his mule, and as the mule went under some thick branches of a large oak, Absalom's head got caught in the tree. He was left hanging mid-air while the mule he was riding kept on going.
I mean, how big of a head do you have to have?
To get caught in a tree? I'm not really sure. But when one of the men saw this, he told Joab, I just saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree. I wonder how that conversation went. So Joab said to the man who told him this, what? You saw him? Why didn't you strike him to the ground right there? Then I would have had to have given you 10 shekels of silver and a warrior's belt for killing Absalom, which they're not supposed to do. So the man replied to Joab, even if 1,000 shekels were weighed out into my hand, I would not lift my hand against the king's son. In our hearing, the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai protect the young man Absalom for my sake. And if I had put my life in jeopardy and nothing is hidden from my king, you would have kept your distance from me. Yeah,
it just feels like a bargaining thing, doesn't it? Not even 1,000 shekels will do. 2,000?
Basically he's saying it doesn't matter how much because we all heard the king say, don't hurt my son. Right? So the soldiers know the deal here. So Joab said, I'm not going to wait like this for you. So he took 3 javelins in his hand and plunged them into Absalom's heart while Absalom was still alive in the oak tree. And 10 of Joab's armor bearers surrounded Absalom, struck him, and killed him. As if the 3 javelins through the heart weren't enough.
Yeah, there weren't enough, like, there weren't enough rods through his chest.
Right.
So they had to put more in
Let's
there.
hit him. Let's just hit him a few times and see what happens with 10 men. It just seems a little bit overkill. So then Joab sounded the trumpet, and the troops stopped pursuing Israel, for Joab halted them. They took Absalom, threw him into a big pit in the forest, and piled up a large heap of rocks over him. Meanwhile, all the Israelites fled to their homes. During his lifetime, Absalom had taken a pillar and erected it in the king's valley as a monument to himself, for he thought, "I have no son to carry on the memory of my name." He named the pillar after himself and called it Absalom's monument, and it is called Absalom's monument to this day. Now,
yeah, this is where it kind of gets interesting. KC has done some pretty good research on this.
so an interesting thing about this Absalom's monument, or also known as Absalom's pillar or Absalom's tomb, it was actually built during the 1st century, which, according to biblical timelines, would have been 1,000 years after Absalom lived. So this is not, one, it's definitely not Absalom's tomb, because we just read in the story that when they killed Absalom, they threw him in in a pit in the forest and covered him up with rocks and shit.
Narnia, honey, please get it correct. They sent his ass to Narnia.
Yeah, so he definitely isn't buried in or around or near or under this tomb, pillar, monument place. But it's also interesting because I checked it out a little more, and archaeologists have looked at this and studied it, and they actually found some inscriptions on the tomb. And one inscription says, "This is the tomb of Zachariah, the martyr, the holy priest, the father of John." And this is referring to John the Baptist. And so it's interesting because this inscription, and there's another one that says, "And look, there was a man in Jerusalem named Simeon, and this man was righteous and devout, waiting for Israel's consolation." So they found a couple of inscriptions here. And they say this is a tomb, but this is considered a secondary use inscription because they were written on the monument more than 3 centuries later. So what they were doing was, Christian monks residing in Jerusalem at the time, they were commemorating important figures and attributing a connection between them and existing tombs or structures, basically to try to write history and make it more valid. Like, they were basically planting evidence, right? But through archaeology, we know that this didn't actually happen at the right times. So we know that Absalom's not here. We know that Zechariah is not here. We know that Simeon is not there. What they don't know is who the actual tomb monument was for, but it's believed that it could possibly be connected to Herod in some way. BibleReadingArchaeology.com has a couple of really interesting articles about this, if you're interested in checking that out.
Right, and it makes a lot of sense that they would want to co-opt like different things in history to make their particular stance or faith more legitimate, because they do this throughout history of, like, basically changing things in order to validate their own religion.
Well, yeah, I mean, they even did that in the New Testament, right? In the Gospels, they added at the end of Mark.
Yeah, they added at the end of Mark, the long ending of Mark.
Yeah, so I mean, they're adding in evidence to try to reinforce their stories, and we're finding out, as time goes on, we're finding out that these things are invalid. They were added later. This is not legitimate. And so I think that's really interesting, that we can go and kind of debunk some of this historical stuff. Because right here it says it's called Absalom's monument, but that wasn't there. That monument wasn't even there when he died. It wasn't there for more than 1,000 years later.
Right, and I mean, this is all because, of course, of how the Old Testament was written, documentary style. There's 3 different sections, if you will, by how they write, and this is obviously in a section that comes well after the events it claims to be recording.
Or possibly they were talking about something else and that thing has just taken on its name, but either way, it's being attributed to things that it's not in multiple cases.
Right.
So
where do we go from here, honey?
Okay, well, so the Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, "Let me run and take the news to the king that the Lord has delivered him from the hands of his enemies." So he wants to go and tell everybody that David is alive. He wants to tell David that what happened, that they won. Also, Absalom's dead.
Not just dead, though.
Super dead.
We're super certain he's super fucking dead.
Yeah. Extra dead.
Extra dead.
3 times plus beaten by 10 dudes dead.
No, hold on, David. Not beaten off by 10 dudes, but beaten by 10 dudes.
Yes, he got it on with 10 girls the night before.
Yeah.
So I mean, at least he had a good night before.
He was probably drained.
Probably. Anyway, which might be why he got his head stuck in a tree. Anyway, here we are. So, you are not the one to take the news today, Joab told him. You may take the news another time, but you must not do so today because the king's son is dead. Then Joab said to a Cushite, "Go tell the king what you've seen." The Cushite bowed down before Joab and ran off. Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, again said to Joab, "Come what may, please let me run behind the Cushite." But Joab replied, "My son, why do you want to go? You don't have any news that will bring you a reward." He said, "Come what may, I want to run." So, Forrest, we should just rename him Forrest.
Come with, he says, "Come with me, I want to."
Come what may.
Come what may.
I just want to run.
I just want to run.
I want to run. Come what may, I want to run.
Would it be bad of me to make a run, Forrest, run kind of joke here?
That's what I said. We should rename him Forrest.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I get that, but that's what made me think of the run, Forrest, run!
Right. So Joab said, "Run." Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and outran the Cushite. While David was sitting between the inner and outer gates, the watchman went up to the roof of the gateway by the wall. As he looked out, he saw a man running alone. The watchman called out to the king and reported it. The king said if he is alone, he must have good news, and the man came closer and closer. Then the watchman saw another man running, and he called out to the gatekeeper, "Look, another man running alone." The king said he must be bringing good news too. The watchman said, "It seems to me that the first one runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok," which, how would they know what that person runs like? Unless he runs like Phoebe from Friends.
Yeah, he's got to run like super fucking weird. It's like, oh, yeah, that's that. Oh, what was his name?
Ahimaaz.
That's that Ahimaaz run. It's the one where you kick your asshole as you run along.
So he's a good man, the king said. He comes with good news. Then Ahimaaz called out to the king, "All is well." He bowed down before the king with his face to the ground and said, "Praise be to the Lord your God. He has delivered up the men who lifted their hands against my lord the king." The king asked, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Ahimaaz answered, "I saw great confusion just as Joab was about to send the king's servant to me and your servant, but I don't know what it was." The king said, "Stand aside and wait here." So he stepped aside and stood there. Then the Cushite arrived and said, "My lord the king, hear the good news. The Lord has delivered you today from all those who rose up against you." The king asked the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The Cushite replied, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up to harm against you be like that young man." The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you, oh Absalom, my son, my son." So he knows now that his son has been killed somehow.
If only you didn't have a giant fucking head and get stuck in that tree and then
but Joab did, went against what the king said.
Oh, I know.
So even if he had got his head stuck in a tree, it shouldn't have mattered because Joab should not have killed him.
Right. I mean, he still would have rammed his rod deep inside his heart.
Well, so we have to wonder what's Joab's motive here, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had to have done it for a reason. Maybe it's because he betrayed the king and Joab was pissed about it and was like, well, the only reason that the king is doing this is because it wants him not killed is because he's his son, but he's going to try to take power again and he'll do this to us again, so we should kill him and prevent it.
Right.
And maybe that was the right thing to do from the perspective of like a general in this guy's, in this king's army the king is clearly not thinking as he's not thinking as he normally would because it's his son.
Right.
Right. So Joab was told the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom, and for the whole army the victory that day was turned into mourning because on that day the troops heard it said, the king is grieving for his son. The men stole into the city that day, as men steal in who are ashamed when they flee from battle. The king covered his face and cried aloud, "O my son Absalom, O Absalom, my son, my son." So that's where we're going to end today.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh. And next time, we are going to continue on with this story. The kingdom's kind of in confusion at this point because David was the king, then Absalom was the king, and now David's the king, and some people were following David and some people were following Absalom, and there's kind of like this struggle of what do we do? And, kind of a division. We've kind of had a division here where Absalom's people really wanted Absalom and David's men killed them. Who was the king? Who wasn't the king? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's kind of a power struggle here. And so we're going to get through some of that. We're going to meet Mephibosheth, right? We're going to talk to Mephibosheth next time. And David is going to return to Jerusalem.
Oh, yay. Finally coming back home.
Yeah.
You think he's just going to kill all of his concubines, or what do you think that situation's going to be like?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out next time.
Yeah, I guess we will.
Mm-hmm.
All right, heathens. We'll really appreciate you guys joining us this week for the Daily Bible Podcast. I'm going to do my best not to fuck up. So if you're listening to this, then I didn't fuck up, and yay me.
Right? Just file save as.
I know.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to try.
All right.
Well,
don't forget to stand up and use your voice.
Bye, heathens.
Bye, y'all.